while they were still alive. Imagine this, you're upside down, stripped bare, strung up like a carcass at the center of a jeering crowd. Your face is purple from blood rushing to your skull. Your hands tied, your legs spread. And right between them, someone begins to saw, not with a clean surgical blade, but with a long two-man saw, the kind you'd use to cut through tree trunks. Rusty teeth, gritty steel. It bites into your flesh like it's carving wood, but slower, so much slower. You scream, and the sound tears out of you like your lungs are trying to escape. But they don't stop. They never stop. Now here's the worst part. You're not dead. Not even close. You feel everything. Because being hung upside down keeps you conscious longer. Blood pools in your brain, keeping it alive, aware, and helpless. You see the crowd. Their eyes. Some look away. Some watch. Some laugh. That's when it hits you. This isn't justice. This isn't punishment. This is theater. And you're not the criminal, you're the message. Who the hell came up with this, and why? You thought that first scene was hellish. Wait till you find out how many people thought that was a great idea. Let's rewind time. Way, way back. Before guillotines, before lethal injections. Before we wrapped death in white coats and legal paperwork. Let's go back to when dying wasn't enough. You had to become a warning. And sawing a human being in half, that wasn't some one-time rogue executioner moment. This was a refined act. Rehearsed, repeated, a message designed to echo across cities and generations. Rome, absolutely. Europe's glorious Middle Ages, you bet. The Ottomans, efficient and brutal. China, with poetic precision. They all shared one truth. Killing someone is easy, but breaking their soul in front of 1,000 eyes, that takes vision. You see, this wasn't punishment, it was political choreography. They didn't kill rebels, they disassembled them. Hanging the victim upside down wasn't some cruel flair, it was medical strategy. More blood to the brain, more oxygen, more awareness, more time. Every second they stayed awake was another second the message got louder. Here's where it gets sick. The pain wasn't the point. The consciousness was. They wanted you to feel your body splitting, to hear the crowd gasping, to realize as your pelvis cracked that you weren't just dying, you were being erased. Because the saw didn't just cut flesh, it cut status, identity, dignity. You became two halves of a shattered symbol. So no, this wasn't invented by accident. This was the preferred death for those who dared to mean something. And that brings us to the real nightmares, the stories of those poor bastards who meant too much. Some of them just prayed to the wrong god. Some spoke a little too loud. Some were in the wrong place with the wrong last name. But all of them ended the same way, with steel between their legs and history forgetting everything but their screams. The victim was never just a criminal. You probably thought the people being sawed in half were monsters, right? Murderers, rapists, the worst of the worst. But what if I told you some of them were priests, scribes, even kids? Because here's the horrifying truth. You didn't have to be guilty. You just had to be inconvenient. History doesn't remember them all. Most names were lost, buried with the severed torsos and scattered entrails, but a few slipped through the cracks. Ghosts screaming from faded parchment. Take the case of a Christian convert in Persia during the Sasanian Empire. His crime, he refused to renounce his faith. That's it. So they dragged him out into the open, tied his ankles to the beam, hoisted him upside down, and started cutting. The saw entered through his groin, a deliberate humiliation, then worked its way up through his pelvis. No blindfold, no prayer, only the sound of metal on bone. And a priest who never screamed, because he was too proud to give them that satisfaction. Then there's the peasant revolt in the Holy Roman Empire. The ringleaders were promised a fair trial. Guess what fair meant? A public square. A crowd hungry for punishment, and a pair of lumbermen hired to do the honors. They didn't just saw one, they did 5, back to back. The audience clapped like it was a damn festival. The fifth man. He wasn't even involved. He was just the brother of one of the rebels. Guilt by relation, by blood. They made him watch the first four, then made him the fifth. This punishment didn't just kill, it reached into families, communities, generations. There's a tale from Eastern Europe about a noblewoman whose sons had joined a rebellion. She didn't know, didn't help them, but the king needed to make a point. So what did they do? They spared her, but forced her to watch. As they sawed her eldest in front of her, they tied her down beside the scaffold, let her hear every scream, see every twitch, let her smell the blood and bile mixing in the dirt. Then they turned to her and said, "Tell the other mothers." That's what this punishment was, not a sentence, a performance, a curse passed on through memory. You see, being sawed alive wasn't about what you did, it was about who needed to fear you. You were turned into a living horror story, the kind told around fires, whispered to children, burned into the eyes of anyone who dared to look too long at a throne. And the worst part, dying wasn't even the climax. No. The climax was what happened while it was happening, what it felt like. To be held in that position, to feel yourself being divided, to know you were being erased inch by inch and still be alive enough to feel it. That's where we're going next. What it felt like, hell wide awake. Most people think pain is the worst part. It's not. The worst part is being conscious of it all. You're upside down. Gravity's choking you slowly, not in your throat, but in your skull. Blood surges to your brain, not to kill you, but to keep you awake. At first, your thighs scream. Then your pelvis starts to splinter and you hear it like ice cracking under pressure. But you can't move, can't kick. Your body is locked in place by fear and rope. You try to scream, but the sound gets lost in your chest. There's so much pressure behind your eyes, they feel like they're going to pop. The saw itself, it's not fast. It's not sharp enough to glide. It grinds, it chatters. Every tooth drags through you like someone pulling a rake across wet cement, except the cement is your flesh. And they don't always cut straight. Sometimes it veers, hits nerves, jerks, slips. That's when the real screaming starts. Not just from you, from the crowd too. Some cheer, some gag, some just stare, frozen. Let's get deeper. Your spine doesn't break clean. It moans like old timber splitting in a storm, and you feel it. Oh God, you feel it. Like lightning in your ribs, like your soul trying to rip itself free from your bones. You lose control of your bladder, then your bowels. You feel warm liquid run across your chest, your arms. The saw makes sure dignity dies before the body does. And in the middle of all this, some accounts, ancient, whispered, barely believed, say that victims would sometimes orgasm. No, really. The saw passing through the groin sometimes triggered the wrong nerves. A biological glitch, a final act of betrayal by the body itself. Imagine climaxing while being butchered alive. That wasn't pleasure. That was absolute annihilation of the self. The crowd would roar with laughter, not pity. You didn't die a man. You died a joke. A sick, twitching punchline. The final moments, not silence, not peace, just awareness. You feel your organs shift, your lungs collapse. You try to inhale, but there's nothing left to hold the breath in. And just before it ends, you see your own blood dripping from the saw like ink from a quill, writing your final chapter across the dirt. But dying wasn't the end. Oh no. Because your body, your butchered, desecrated body, had one more job to do, to haunt, and we're about to see how. The death that didn't end. You thought once the saw stopped, it was over. No, the saw cut, but the corpse spoke. They didn't bury you. That would have been mercy. Instead, they used you. Two halves of a body laid out like broken tablets of some lost scripture. One facing north, one facing south. Your entrails arranged like garlands. Your face frozen in whatever shape it died in, a scream, a prayer, a punchline. Sometimes they'd hang each half on opposite gates of a city, so travelers would see you coming in, and again going out. Sometimes they'd impale the torso on a pike and stick the legs in a ditch, so that no matter where you looked, you were being watched by the pieces of someone who dared to stand up, and the people didn't forget, even if they wanted to. Parents would point to the rotting halves and whisper to their children. That's what happens when you speak against the king. Scribes wrote about it in trembling ink. Monks drew it in the margins of Bibles. Artists etched it into wood like it was divine judgment. That mangled body became scripture, not of God, but of power. Because the message wasn't just, obey or die. It was, obey or become legend. Sometimes the body refused to fade. There are stories, old, mouldy, half-lost, of people dreaming of the sword man years later. They'd hear the saw in their sleep, hear the twitch, the choking, the blade grinding on the same nerve over and over. In some towns, children were told not to walk near the execution site after dark. Not because of ghosts, but because the dirt itself remembered. The ground was never the same. They said it grew nothing, smelled like burnt teeth. The blood had soaked too deep. But the worst, the truly chilling part, it worked. Public order surged. Uprisings slowed. Loyalty increased. People weren't just scared of the saw. They were scared of becoming what it left behind. Not just dead, but shamed forever. Because what the saw didn't kill, the memory of it did. And just when you think this horror couldn't possibly live past the Middle Ages, it does. It mutates. Through art, through religion, through pop culture and horror movies and history textbooks written by people who should have known better. The saw keeps cutting, just not in the way you expect. The echoes of the saw, it never left us. You can stop sawing a body, but how do you stop the idea? See, we like to pretend we're better now. We've got laws, courts, human rights. Nobody gets sawed in half in the middle of town anymore. But let's not lie to ourselves. We didn't destroy the saw. We just changed where we pointed, because public punishment, that never really went out of fashion. It just swapped stages, from wooden scaffolds to digital screens. Today, when someone messes up, slips up, or just dares to speak too loud, we don't reach for the iron chains, we open apps, and the crowd still shows up, hungry, thirsty, not for justice, but for a show. Think about it. We don't cut people in half anymore. We cut their reputation. We split their careers down the middle. We sever their names from their bodies, until all that's left is a headline, a hashtag, and a history rewritten in real time. They still twitch, just silently, behind screens, and the public still leans in just like before. Not to stop it, but to watch. Television, the ancient ritual, rebranded. Modern media doesn't call it execution. It calls it accountability, calls it commentary, calls it content. But it's the same choreography, one person held in place, one crowd gathering, one cut at a time, and nobody steps in. And sometimes, no one has to do it to us. We pick up the saw ourselves, we scroll, we compare, we criticize ourselves until our own identity splits in half. Who we are, who we pretend to be, every filtered photo, every perfect post, every quiet moment where we think, I'm not enough, I should be more, I deserve to bleed. The medievals didn't need smartphones, but their ghosts live in our heads, still whispering, still soaring. We haven't evolved past cruelty. We've just outsourced it to algorithms. They know what gets views, what spikes dopamine, what keeps us hooked. It's the same old spectacle, now streaming in HD, personalized for you. So maybe the question is, how could they do that back then? Maybe it's, why do we still crave it now? And if someone were to bring back the saw, not metaphorical, not digital, but real, would you really look away? Let's find out. The final cut. Let's not pretend anymore. This story, the saw, the blood, the screams, it's never really been about them. It's always been about us, because you didn't just hear this history. You felt it. You imagined the screaming. You pictured the steel. You followed the blood trail, part by part, and at some point, you stopped flinching. That's not your fault. That's how this works. You don't need to swing the blade to be part of it. You just need to watch long enough that it starts to feel normal. And that's exactly what the saw wants. The real saw. The real saw isn't made of iron anymore. It's made of indifference, of silence, of that quiet little voice in the back of your head that whispers, "They probably deserved it. It's not my problem. It's just the internet." But that's where the damage begins. That's the first tooth of the blade. And it only cuts deeper from there, echoes in our time. Every time we cheer someone's downfall. Every time we retweet a scandal. Every time we pile on, not to seek truth, but to feel righteous. That's the saw, still spinning, still warm. Modern society likes to think it buried its monsters, but the monsters just changed their masks. They're sharper now, faster, digitized, and we're still handing them the rope. Your role in all this. So what now? Do you walk away? Pretend this was just a bit of edgy history, a weird dark video on YouTube? You could, but it won't stop the blade. It never has. Because the truth is, the saw never leaves. It waits for the next name, the next mistake, the next person to be called a traitor, monster, other. And the next time it happens, you'll have a choice. You can be the crowd, the one that points, the one that cheers, or you can be the one who turns away, the one who remembers, the one who knows what this really is. So ask yourself right now, while your fingers still tingle and your stomach still turns, are you watching history or helping it repeat? Will you be another pair of eyes in the crowd? Or will you be the reason the saw finally stops?